Hey everyone, I managed to chase off Alex Navarro to the Bay Area. He's got family or something out there, I don't know, something that he doesn't want to be with me on Monday. So I had to look for love in different places, and thankfully, newly independent game critic Jim Sterling decided he was willing to entertain me.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jim.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure, never a chore.
I think start off. Congratulations is in order. You have recently taken a big old risk. And it seems to, well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I want to say it's going well, but I guess you could tell me if it's a disaster.
It's going disastrously well. It's going better than I expected, which is making me. It's real butt clenching time. I was hoping, of course, for to earn a decent crust, continue to do what I do, and directly serve my audience rather than worry about having to serve anyone else. Didn't expect it to go that well that fast. Trying not to fall into the same pitfalls of anyone who does this kind of thing and becomes too successful too fast. I say too successful, that fast, that well. Trying not to go crazy and suddenly, I can buy a $10,000 camera now and go into crazy. So I'm trying to keep things in check, in perspective, and understand, of course, that this could go up or down, and just be damn grateful and relieved that so far it seems to be working okay.
So let's back up from there. So in the past, up until very recently, you've been kind of doing what we've been, in similar lines of work, jumping from different enthusiast outlet to different enthusiast outlet. And then you were primarily Destructoid, and then started doing a bunch of freelance and like working for the Escapists, and then starting your stuff on the side. But then recently, you decided to kind of pull everything and go it on your own, raise money on Patreon, which people, if they're interested, is just patreon.com/Jim Sterling.
Jimquisition.
Jimquisition. So how did we get to this point? Because it is a big leap to kind of put faith in yourself and the audience, and to say, even if these paychecks I've been getting elsewhere have not been as much as I think I deserve, it's still nice to get them, and they're guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, part of it is when I really think about it. The risks associated with Patreon, now that it's up and running and I kind of have a view of how many people are initially willing to contribute to the product, I guess, that I'm hawking on the internet, really it feels less risky now. The initial thing was the hugest gamble I've ever taken, but now that I've seen that it initially worked, it feels like less of a risk, because here, clearly, a couple of thousand people have contributed to the process of making Jimquisition and everything, and they're not all going to suddenly go at once, And I expect the Patreon thing to go up and down, up and down.
Yeah, sure.
It's unreliable, the amount, but then again, I mean, Jimquisition was ad supported and therefore based on views, so that was up and down. Not to mention, if people start pulling support for the show, it's something I'm going to clearly see coming. I'm not going to wake up one day and suddenly I'm at 0 patrons. Whereas I could wake up one day and the Escapist's been sold again to someone and they told everyone to get out, or Destructoid finally sold and they told everyone to get out, or there's no money. I mean, it's always a risk. I mean, as far as I know, the Escapist and Destructoid both doing fine right now, but it is a huge risk. Just to be a game blog, be an enthusiast site right now, as we've all seen the layoffs at various big companies, and to me, now that I really think about it, that feels riskier. Being in a job where you could wake up one day and suddenly it's not there anymore. Whereas here, I've had a good audience for almost 8 years now. That feels more real to me. That feels more reliable, more of a solid foundation than anything else. So yeah, I mean, it's still a nerve-wracking thing. Clearly, I have a lot of people that I'm now directly working to keep serving the product to them. But yeah, as scary as it is, when I really sit back and logically, sensibly thinking about it. Obviously, rational thought and emotional thought are two totally different things.
Right.
So as I say all this, in about an hour's time, I'll probably be shitting myself again. But logically, it feels, if not safer, at least a bit more trustworthy.
Well, it's interesting. I have to imagine for you the scariest part is that initial moment when you kind of click launch, because you and I have a decent number of Twitter followers, and we have people that comment on our stuff. Like, there's a sense that when you say things, when you publish things, like, you get feedback and you get a sense of there are people that value what I have to say, but someone clicking or following on Twitter is something entirely different than saying, I would like you to support what I'm doing, my livelihood, by giving me a little bit of what you earn in your hardworking daily life. Like, please allow me to do what I do. Actually translating that to, backing it up with money. That's the part that I think would scare the shit out of me. Is just maybe people like what I do, but not enough to say we'd like to support you doing it.
Yeah, I've had people tell me over the years, you should go and strike out independently. You should go do your own thing. Maybe look into crowdfunding. I've even said a few times, I'd never want to do something like Kickstarter because it terrifies me. It's scary enough signing an agreement with a website to promise them a certain video a week and everything, and that's it. Too much responsibility for me already. This is a whole different ballgame, but it really did get to the point where it's like, it's now or never. I mean, let's find out. And this is the guy that won't even do a panel at PAX or somewhere on his own because he's terrified like 2 people will show up and they'll hate him. I really don't have. I don't want to say it in a way that sounds insulting to my audience, because obviously they've always been there and I've always felt their support, and that's always been wonderful. But there's always, again, it's the logical and illogical thought processes.
I think lots of folks in this business have that exact.
Yeah, that's
the imposter syndrome, where you just feel like, I feel like I do a good job at what I do, but someday they're all going to figure out I'm terrible at it, and then they're all going to figure out my ruse.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And on the Friday night when I hit the click thing, I did have what was probably my first full-scale panic attack. I've got the same kinds of neuroses and anxieties that I think a lot of people in this who do public creative things have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with all sorts of anxiety issues and whatnot, but I've never been the panic attack kind of guy. It's always been more of a muted, consistent fear of everything. But that was my full-on, like, it was half an hour after I clicked live on it that I suddenly told myself I never want to write about video games again.
This is it. I went too far. This is too far.
Yeah, like, you've done it this time, Sterling. And then over the course of the weekend, like, it took until Monday, until I actually got the first independent Jimquisition up, and then it was like, okay, I'm working again now, producing the work. I put up, I want to say about 4, maybe 5 reviews this past week. Getting the work out there and finally delivering the content that people are kind of, I guess, they've got a totally optional, customizable subscription to, is the way I like to put it. And now that I'm finally putting that content in their hands, and this week, Thursday, fingers crossed, we'll have the podcast set up as well. So yeah, I feel a lot better now that I'm working. But that weekend was terrifying.
And you gave yourself a weekend too. It's just like an entire, just 48 hours just to stew, where you don't have anything except, well, I guess maybe I should refresh that page again. It's been 5 minutes, right? That's a reasonable amount of time to refresh this page again.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like an ungrateful asshole because I had people messaging me, friends and family and former co-workers as well, who've all been really supportive, congratulating me and saying, you must be celebrating right now, you must be dancing on the roof, and I'm like, no, this is horrible. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I felt like this real dick, because I was just too scared to celebrate. And the more successful it got, the more scared I became.
Oh no, I've unleashed this monster. I can't put it back in. Now
Yeah.
it's far too late.
Yeah, and that was coupled with there were some comments online about people who said I didn't deserve this and how I was called at one point morally reprehensible for setting up.
Just like the rest of us, Jim. Just
Yeah,
join the club.
yeah. So there was that going on, which kind of added a bit of stress. But Monday rolled around. I got up. I finished editing the Inquisition last minute. Some people thought I was on Xanax. I just recorded first thing at 7 in the morning, and because I was waiting to get some more ducks in a row. So it was very seat of your pants. But once that got live and people were reacting really positively to it, I saw the NeoGAF thread on the first Inquisition that went up, and they were thrilled that they could view it on an iPad now and see it in full HD at 60 frames per second, which, as I said at the time, is more than can be said for a lot of AAA console games. Once that was up and people were pleased with it, I feel a lot better. Now I'm allowing myself some celebration, tempered celebration, because this is the worst time to get cocky.
I think it's what's kind of amazing about it, and we're sort of seeing this in all sorts of these various new forms of funding, whatever, whether it's crowdfunding a Kickstarter for game projects, or for you to go independent on Patreon. It's this sense that traditionally we've thought you have to get tens or hundreds of thousands of views or clicks or whatever to generate a small amount of money. Like, it's just very difficult to make money through these indirect means, and on crowdfunding, or in regards to Kickstarter or what you're doing, you have a very small amount of people that are supporting a number that seems big when you say it, but the amount of people who are getting you there isn't a lot. But relative to how, in the traditional model of, if you were trying to make $10,000 a month just doing game reviews or doing Gymquisitions and trying to make that off of ads, like, you wouldn't get anywhere near there. You would have to do things very differently to even consider hitting something like that. And yet, you build a base, they respond, and they sort of give you in kind what they think you're owed, but it comes from a much smaller pool of people, which is kind of amazing, and I think a really good trend.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this when Destructoid trialed the Destructoid Huge membership program, which works in a similar way to the Giant Bomb subscription stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Escapist has the Publishers Club, and we've seen outlets go for that kind of thing with varying levels of success. I think Giant Bomb's been one of the most successful publications to try it.
And we're also, I think part of the reason people respond to it is because they can tie themselves to a personality. Like, they know what they're getting into. Like, if it's just a publication offering, more behind a paywall, that means less to people these days, given that people are gravitating towards people that they like. And so they're responding to you, so they want to back you. Giant Bomb is a personality site, so it's like they're responding to us, as opposed to just, they're not really, like, we could rename the site and they would buy the subscription. Like, Giant Bomb doesn't mean anything to anyone, really. Like, maybe it summarizes an ethos or a personality, but, it's, if we swapped out 6 or 7 different people, everyone might go away.
It's definitely the people, and it's something I've been telling. Every now and then you get people asking how to make it, how to survive, and whatnot, writing about video games for a living. And one thing I always tell them is, do not put your publication before yourself, because I've seen fantastic writers who wrote for a publication. They were company people. They had their name in a byline, but that was about it. They just produced the solid content, and it got credited to the site. Then they got laid off, and they couldn't get a job for love nor money because no one knew who they were. They were talented, but they never put their personality out there, and they didn't get that support from the people. And it is crucial, more so now than ever. A faceless publication is really not going to be as future-proofed as something like Giant Bomb, where the people and the audience like the people giving them the content. That definitely helps, and obviously I've been incredibly fortunate over the years to have really carved a good personality and a good audience, and kind of built a little community of my own, doing the various podcasts and videos and stuff over the years. And you're right, it becomes a smaller amount of people giving you the sustainable income, but it's so much more valuable, and we've seen that with subscriptions. I think I forget what the exact figure Nero told me at Destructoid at one point, but it was like, one subscription is going to be worth, at least 10 people just clicking on an ad. The ad-supported model has never really been in favor of anyone but the ad networks at the end of the day. And that is a system that I've become increasingly displeased with. And I'm really glad that, at least in some cases, we're starting to see that it doesn't have to be the only model.
Yeah, I mean, the ad model is, it's what we know. It's proven. It may not be a great system, but it's a system, and in a world, in a collapsing media environment in which there are just very few options to support a lot of people, the ad-supported stuff is what people have doubled down on. But I think we've increasingly seen, and it's probably always been the case, that ad-supported stuff does not generate better content. It tends to generate worse content because you have to then craft the content around what's going to encourage eyeballs to the ads. And I think a lot of people try to do their best within that and do some great work, given that's kind of the compromise they're in. But I don't think it can be argued that the ad model results in better stuff for readers or happier content creators. I think it hurts everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, two of the other people who are using Patreon, who have served as a kind of inspiration for my own stuff, would be Cara Ellison and Matt Lees, both of whom do very offbeat reporting. Cara Ellison is possibly my favorite writer writing Matt games at the moment. The stuff she covers is just so different, and she's got just this awesome sense of humor in what she does. And she's the kind of person who will go to a preview event along with everyone else, but come back with a preview talking about nothing but goats or just
exactly.
And she uses Patreon to help keep that afloat because there might not be a huge amount of advertising money in that. And Matt Lees especially said he was sick of this idea that a video was worthless if it didn't have 100,000 views. And he wanted to create content that wouldn't get 100,000 views, but would nonetheless serve a very distinct audience, an audience that would be so into that kind of content that they'd be willing to help contribute to keep that content going, which is a fantastic idea. I mean, it makes me think of something like the BBC in the UK, which, a series of television and radio stations and whatnot that produce content without ads. It's kind of there can be arguments as to whether it should be government mandated or not. But,
sure.
But it's certainly a similar model. It's more compulsory, but it's a similar model, and it allows them to, when they're not having tennis on two channels at the same time and pushing Red Dwarf back like they did in the 90s. It allows them to do more interesting television, the kind of documentaries and news exposés that people say they want, but don't actually watch in droves. Don't actually watch in the numbers that are suggested they would. So yeah, seeing that come to the web and seeing people embrace it, and again, not everyone does well with it, which it would be awesome if everyone did, but those that have turned it into something successful, it's great to see, and I really am supportive of anybody who gets out of the old ways, gets out of the old system, because it's not a system that generally rewards the talented, I don't think.
No, and it's led to kind of interesting situations like a BuzzFeed, a site that gets I think rightfully so a pretty bad rap, but at the same time, essentially what BuzzFeed is trying to do, and if you followed what they've been doing on a slightly deeper level for like the last 18 months, is they've gotten exceptionally good at writing these listicles, things that people will click on that are explicitly made for sharing, and they get around, and that stuff makes a lot of money for them. But then they also do like really serious critical reporting and politics and culture, and that stuff doesn't do nearly as well, but it gives value to BuzzFeed in terms of what it's giving back to sort of the community writ large, and the listicle stuff supports that. It doesn't exist without the listicles, and so they created a model in which they kind of hurt their own reputation as they're trying to save their reputation, because that's the monster they've created, and that's the business model that works for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's indicative of so much web entertainment. whether it's enthusiast games blogging or videos or whatever, there seems to be so much compromising, so much Faustian bargaining that you have to do, and BuzzFeed, I think, is a great example of that kind of Faustian pact, where it's like, we have to do this horrible shit to get this good shit out. And it really is sad that it had to be that way, but that's what happens. I mean, we see this in every form of entertainment, in every form of business. The people with less than honest intentions get in first, set up the system, set up the environment, codify how it should be, and then by the time the creative people are absorbed into that system, they've been led to believe that's how it's always been, that's how it always should be, this is the way it's done, so let's just all march in lockstep.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been amazing about the last couple of years is, crowdfunding kind of came in, no one really knows what it means, and then it takes time for it to either make sense for different individuals or people to feel the confidence that, okay, I'm gonna take that risk. And I think what's great is, like, it's worked out for you, and then, or at least, so far so good, knock on wood, but hopefully it encourages other people to say, look, you know what, I've spent a lot of years building up this thing, because I think what ends up happening is people get really tired of the system and then they leave. Like, games writing doesn't do a very good job of supporting people financially as they're getting older. The grind of being able to stay in that system ends up spitting people out. It's why we lose so many people to game development, because if you want to own a house or have kids and things like that, games writing is, there are very few jobs that are going to support you in your pursuit of that, and the couple of people that have those jobs that pay enough are not going to give them up. And
I mean, I was lucky enough to earn a decent wage. I have a mortgage and I can support a family, and have been doing for a few years. But at the same time, I had to have 3 relatively successful video series to do it, as well as a full-time reviews editor job and other work on the side. Like, those people that get into those good jobs are certainly incredibly lucky to do so, but also have to work an incredible amount. You've got to produce so much to keep it sustainable, and it can kill people. I mean, and as well as that, I mean, just some of the shit people have to put up with online from, working online can be not the most pleasant of environments all of the time, and I think so many people do get burned out as a result of working more, going above the call of duty in terms of work, then dealing with stuff 24/7, all kinds of insults, abuse, and all that kind of stuff. And I said to, I think it was Gavin Dunn, I said, Miracle of Sound, this past couple of weeks ago, I said, if I get to leave this industry on my own terms without feeling burned out, pushed out, kicked out, or whatever, I'd consider that the most successful thing I've ever done in my career, to actually think, I've had enough and I'm happy, and now I will walk away, rather than feel, beleaguered and just say, I've got to get out. Being able to choose to get out is this kind of amazing luxury and this ideal. Not that I'm looking to get out. It's just if it came to that point when it was time to retire, if I feel like I could retire one day, hopefully not for a long time, because you don't see that with people. They either disappear off the face of the earth or they get a better job.
Yeah, and then they usually leave, with middle fingers flipped up, saying, fuck this, and I've had enough of this job, and they move on, and that's frustrating. That's too bad, and that cycle has continued for a long time, and obviously there are precious few individuals that aren't able to do something like you're doing, but it at least proves that it's possible, and that any new avenues for people to support themselves, especially outside the traditional system, is a good sign, because there just haven't been, 2 years ago that didn't exist at all, and now 2 years later it does. So even if it only applies to a small amount of people, the fact that it even exists, I think, is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely, and I like to think, I certainly hope that the joy can spread there. My friend Conrad, who I work with on the Fistchart Marketing podcast, he's a bit of a stat junkie, and he was looking. I try not to look at the actual donation the actual patrons myself individually, unless they contact me directly or leave a comment, because I don't want to sit there knowing who's given money and stuff.
It's just one guy who gave $9,500, and it's just you really got to do what he says.
So I don't really look at that side of things myself, but he was looking, and he said that over 50% of the people who were contributing are brand new to Patreon. This is the first thing they've kicked money to. So I've brought in quite a few people, and on the few pages I did look at when he told me that, and I was a bit curious, I've seen that Jimquisition is the first thing they've given money to, and then they've gone on to do other things, as they've donated to me, and then thought, well, that was easy, what else is there? And I went through this with Kickstarter. I contributed stuff to like the funny enough, I don't do many game ones, but I did the Skeleton Warriors reboot toy series they were doing, and then felt the benefits of that and enjoyed doing that, and then went and looked at other stuff. The Eric Scarecrow Miami Hotline figure being the latest one I did, and it becomes this kind of joyful experience to see these new projects and give money to them once you've done it the first time. So my hope is that people will see me producing the content. I've been working extra hard this past week to really get stuff up, to see people getting what they are subscribing to, and then hopefully that will encourage them to look at other people who are already on there and might go on there in future. And I've seen that happen a bit, and hopefully that, and break down a bit of the stigma as well. There are a few people that have accused me of now being on hipster welfare for being on there, when it's kind of, it's more like you're just selling a product and people set their own price. And hopefully as people see that and see the work that people put into it, again, some of that stigma will go away, because I do think it's a ridiculous stigma, and the worst thing you should be doing is trying to discourage people from breaking out of the old system. I think that really shows you how in the thrall of old archaic systems people get when they look at anything that bucks that trend as less than noble. We saw this with YouTubers when the content ID stuff really kicked in at the beginning of this year. People saying, oh, they should get a real job anyway. And it's like, well, respectfully, fuck you. Because really all you're doing is buying into this idea that the 9-to-5 job is the only decent job out there, which is exactly what a bunch of dinosaurs upstairs kind of want you to think. It's like you are being the perfect little consumer right there for them, if you don't want to encourage new ways of trying to make a living. So I try never to do that, and I hope that, seeing the success of YouTubers, seeing the success of Kickstarters, seeing the success of people on Patreon can help remove some of that frankly ridiculous stigma.
Yeah, it's almost, it's why sometimes when I've had discussions about this with people, like I flinch at the term YouTubers, because I feel I understand why that term exists. It's it's descriptive, but I dislike it because, especially when I say it from sort of my position, who comes from sort of a traditional background in games, writing and criticism and journalism, is like, oh well, it's YouTubers. Like, oh, there's someone else. They do the same thing I do. They just do it differently. And
sure.
And I just sometimes it just bothers me, because I feel like if I use that term, I'm saying, oh well, there's something different. It's like, well, no, they're different audiences. It's a different way into the same thing I'm doing, or they're presenting it in a different manner. But it's like we're all doing the same thing. In fact, most of those YouTubers are more popular than me. So
insanely so. I mean, I like it insofar as it portrays how diverse games media has become. I mean, games media is this umbrella now. That doesn't just mean game reviewers or people that put press releases up. It covers investigative reporters. It covers people doing videos on YouTube. It covers entertainment as well as information. And I'm really excited by just how diverse it's gotten, and how people have found their own way. I mean, you look at people doing stuff on YouTube and they've managed to do that. I mean, they're ad supported, but it's so much more impersonal because it's YouTube dealing with all that.
Right.
They never have to deal with an advertiser. People sign up to networks and stuff, but certainly in my experience of working with Maker on some content, they really keep their hands off, to the point where I don't think they give a shit. So look, the views are coming in, and they don't even care if you don't produce videos. because they've got plenty of people who are. So yeah, like YouTube is something I was looking at, and I've slowly been building my YouTube channel for a little over a year now, getting consistently more and more successful with it, and I thought, well, that would be a nice thing to do one day, kind of really be fully independent. And it's great to see that people have done it, and I feel awesome being able to kind of do it myself. I mean, I've always kind of straddled this line between, I guess, more traditional coverage and newer stuff. If there's a new form of games coverage coming out, I want to at least try my hand at it, because I think versatility is one of the best skills you can have in an industry that changes so quickly. So yeah, being able to really do this on my own terms and do a little bit of everything and get the support to do it is just, yeah, it's something I struggle to put into words, because it really is just incredible.
It seems like, my cursory understanding, of YouTube. I have my own channel, but I haven't put a lot of effort into it because I haven't need to, because I already have a job. But it seems like you have to get such an extraordinarily high number of views for that to translate into a system that can support you. And that, we have a lot of people that are making videos on YouTube, but videos can have a lot of views, and that doesn't translate to a lot of money. And that while YouTube is an attractive prospect, it seems like a lot of people are jumping into that and then quickly realizing, oh, good God, you have to do so much here in order to make anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's another form of risk. It's another. I've been incredibly fortunate in that I've been able to have time to build while I worked another job. And even right now, I put it on my Patreon disclosure. There's ad-supported stuff on my channel, but it lets me buy some stupid alien figures now and then, and it helps with the taxes, but it's nothing. I can't pay the bills with it yet. But as I said, it's been consistently growing, and I've seen the benefits. And the other thing about YouTube is at least, I think at least for right now, I think it's still true now. It may be getting less and less true, but it really still is this: anyone can have a go, and there's a shot. Yes, you have to get a lot of views, but I hear